Welcome to today's call, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Mark Nichols.
Thank you, Kelly. Hey, appreciate everybody trying to come on today on a pretty hectic time of the year in midsummer. Normally we got other things going on, but Tom and I have been traveling around the country and we've seen some fun things. We wanted to kind of share with you guys some of the things we've been seeing and kind of push the ideas of some things that we've seen that are very, very positive for us in the fall, and just not take up a lot of time, but just touch on some little things, and let everybody know, Tom, let everybody know that you're here with us.
Here, present and accounted for.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. There's several things we've got going on, but one of the things that was really, really fun for me is when you see guys that have been using our products for a long time. And there's a farm in Eureka, Nevada that I was out in that part of the world visiting Mr. Ralph Nudie, and whenever I'm out there, I try to go by Eureka because Linford Miller and his son Levon, they have a quite an impressive farm out there, and they grow tremendous alfalfa. And I was out there. In fact, I was out there last summer and this summer, and there's a very unique thing that goes on out there. And I don't think I'm supposed to say this word, but Tom tells me they're called Mormon crickets. But where the term came from, I don't know, but nothing to be definitive against Mormons. But these crickets, they're the size of they're huge. They're some of the biggest crickets I've ever seen. Yeah, exactly. About 3-4 inches sometimes. And you can actually see them walking across the roadways. And you can see them squashed on the roadways. In fact, they literally build up and they cause traffic accidents because it's like driving on ice in the summertime. And in the areas where they're prolific, they are very prolific. And so last year I noticed driving out to Linford's farms that they were everywhere. And when I got close to Linford's farm, nothing, zero. And I'm like, this is bizarre. And I mentioned it to Linford. He goes, I hadn't even noticed. He goes, we don't normally get critters around here anymore. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So again, this year I paid attention to it again, drove all the way out, saw them on the other people's farms, saw them everywhere, got to Linford's, zero again. So what we talk about, and Tom's pointed out with different customers, and I've seen it in the turf industry and different things like that, bugs just don't come and light where our products are being used regularly. So it's kind of a fun and unique little happenstance. You just have to see it to believe it. Tom, didn't you see something up in your area too with some bugs on a fence line?
Yeah, a few years ago, it was a malt barley field. We'd been applied on there a couple times, once with the herbicide spray, and again flag leaf, drone timing, and it was bad that year. The grasshoppers blew up and the swarm came in off the desert, and yeah, I got the call actually to got to come down and see this. So when we got out there, it was kind of ironic. The field butted right up against the big desert, and the grasshoppers went all the way around it, and I mean all the way. We pulled up in the grass corner, the dry corner of this field. There's a fence there, the property line between the deeded ground and the state ground or BLM ground, and the grasshoppers were literally swarmed on the wooden fence posts. And we would walk in the field and have grasshoppers kind of hanging on us everywhere. And within 20 feet of walking in the field, the grasshoppers would all leave. So it was kind of remarkable. One thing we learned from that experience, though, is that it's another one of these situations where the ounce of prevention is always more effective, better than the pound of cure. Absolutely. Because we kind of told this story around, and then suddenly farmers get this idea in their head that, well, we're an insecticide, and if the grasshoppers show up, we can just spray whatever, and this is going to take care of them. And it doesn't work that way. I think a lot of what we get credited for is we're a mode of action. We are so good at moving nutrients in a plant, through a plant. Sap analysis has been so educational, so revealing for us. And learning what nutrients move, what nutrients don't, why nutrients that should move don't move sometimes. Iron's a wild animal. Iron has to be in a reduced form. If it's oxidized, why it just gets parked in the old leaves. But through a lot of this, we have we've learned a lot as to how effective. I'm not completely clear on the modus operandi yet. If we obviously have some chelation effects to this. We're going to protect your micronutrients in the spray tank, maybe prevent them from becoming oxidized. I'm not sure yet if we're actually reducing, if we're knocking an oxygen off of some of these nutrients when we get into the plant. But for any of you who are utilizing this plant set technology these days to make agronomic decisions, why this is one you want to pay attention to get the best bang out of your application dollar spent. Why do a test, throw some O1, O2, Nemasan, whatever you're doing in with part of your spray mix, do part of it without, and then monitor that on your sap analysis. You'll generally see a much better movement of the nutrients in the plant. And it's all of these micronutrients that the plant then utilizes, the microbial kingdom utilizes to build all of these secondary metabolites and compounds. And I'm absolutely on the soapbox anymore after doing this for enough years and dealing with enough farmers that I'm absolutely convinced plants are absolutely capable of fending off any disease, any insect that nature throws at them if the environment is conducive, if the plant has everything that it needs to fire and function. And it's through the production of these secondary metabolites, the phenols, sterols, all these kind of, I think that's where we see this repulsion effect start to come from the insects. There certainly is, it's in some of the literature you can read where they've quantified that some of these insects are keen, they're sensitive to the chitinase enzyme, and the insects seem to have, just like a plant has a receptor on it for either an insect or a fungal, whatever, that's basically a chitin receptor. So it only makes sense that the insects would then have a chitinase receptor to be able to pick up what might be detrimental to them. So that's the long-winded explanation to prevention is always better than cure. And as farmers, we've been cultured that we have nothing to worry about. You wait till something shows up and then somebody has a product in a jug and we just go out and kill that one. What we don't ever get told is the side effects that come from some of these things, that there's no research. Nobody looks at the secondary side effects. We got asked to look at a spray adjuvant product here this summer, the ingredients in this, and we're a little bit shocked to learn that the couple of active ingredients in this are known endocrine disruptors. One of the ingredients in this is banned in the European Union for being a forever chemical, and this product goes out by truckloads. It's the farmers appreciate what this product brings to the table. Nobody's ever explained to them the side effects that are gonna come from this down the road. So things to be aware. If we didn't have enough to worry about as farmers, why something else to keep in mind all the time. But there's so much of this stuff. I was just in Montana the last couple of days. In fact, I just got home here about an hour ago, and it's interesting driving around there how many wheat fields are in a windrow right now. It was 100 to 108 degrees in the Golden Triangle yesterday with about a 20-mile-an-hour wind out of the west. So everybody's geared up for harvest about next week. Surprising how many fields are in windrows already, though, because of the sawflies. So as we start getting here from mid-season, kind of start looking into what our plan is for the fall and whatnot, this is one of these avenues that we've had some pretty good success in combination with a couple of things. You get into fall plantings, the Bavaria bassiana organism is just, it's phenomenal. It's remarkable everything this microbe does. Far and away, we have the most experience with a company called Jab of the Carolinas and their particular strain of bassiana. It's interesting too, when you start shopping around, any microbe, just side tangent note here, any microbe you ever look at, when they give you the CFU counts on that, sometimes you have to sit down with Google and do some math here, because sometimes it's listed in colony forming units per gram or CFUs per ounce. And just because one of them has a bigger number, might be in the smaller measuring component, you have to do a little math here to figure out the concentrations, figure out the bang for dollar spent. But in the case of the sawflies, there is some farmers up there that are having not 100%, but a really good success rate with seed treating with the bassiana and the Nemasan when they plant their winter wheat. The bassiana is an entomopathogenic endophyte. endophyte, it gets in the plant, grows with the plant, will take over even some of the stress mechanism, the stress levers in the plant. The entomopathogen, it's always looking for an insect host to complete sexual reproduction. That's the problem with sawflies is they live in that stem. So you need a systemic insecticide to be able to get into them. Gets kind of difficult sometimes. The solid stem wheat varieties were bred to, or can be used to help with this, but you know, up front, there's an economic hit that's probably going to come from a solid stem versus a hollow stem variety. The other thing that some of these farmers notice too is the grasshoppers. Again, we're still in this. This is the 4th year in a row now that my personal dry land's looking like a train wreck happening in slow motion at this point. And the grasshoppers. Some of these guys have found, though, where they did the seed treatment when that grain is small, first coming out of the ground, we don't kill the grasshoppers. The grasshoppers will either go, I've even been shown pictures where the grasshoppers are in the field, hanging out in between the grain rows. You can see the green rows showing up or growing. The grasshoppers hanging out and they're not eating. The neighbors, literally the bordering field is ate to the dirt. And at this point, they were at the 2-leaf stage in the photograph I was shown. And the grasshoppers are there everywhere, but they are not eating anything. So we see stuff, again, prevention versus the cure. It's, it's easier. Well, I'm not going to say it's always easier because sometimes it's really handy just to grab a jug of something toxic and whack it over the head. But there's a side effect with that, and long term, that's not ever the solution. We always kind of got to look at what the long term effects
Well,
of this.
on that note, Tom, when you're talking about grabbing a jug and knocking it over the head, one of the things that I've heard from so many guys that they've been able to take a lot of those jugs they knock them over the head with, and have been able to cut those jugs down to the lowest labeled rates.
Yes.
Just by adding O2 and then getting all the other attributes that O2 is bringing with it. Yes. And a lot of what I've seen personally this summer is literally it's night and day. You can see where we're at. And I mean, granted, I see far more turf than you do, but in other areas, I was up in Pennsylvania and they've been going through a drought, and I'm out in the cornfields and to the line, the fields where they've got O2 and the fields where they're using O1, the corn leaves are not completely rolled up. They're still thriving. The field next door that's not using it, the leaves are rolled up. And literally, I mean, we've got, probably Edwin Wise is doing such a tremendous job up there, but he's got, probably a few dozen more customers just from what they saw the last couple of years. So the train is definitely growing in that part of the world. I love watching that. And I just love watching color. And it's so unique because then I was with Dan Lister down in PA, and to see where they applied product and where they haven't, it is night and day. I mean, the neighborhoods we drove through, the homes that have had O2 added to the mixes, and also he's been able to roll back all of his other stuff in the mixes back to the lowest labeled rates. They look far superior to the other lawns. So it's unique. And that's, I don't want to keep on bragging on that, but that's just, talking about what I've seen and what I know to be true. That's just fun.
And to kick back one more on the reduction of stuff here, especially kind of in the organic crowd, because you're so limited a lot of times with what you're allowed to use and can't use. But one of the perfect examples of this, being able to roll back your chemistry, is the spinosad products that we went into in the past. That anybody who's familiar with this, that is not a cheap chemistry at all. And they're able to significantly, almost in half, reduce it by a third. They're cutting the rates back by a third. Again, we're looking towards the lowest labeled rate. Throw in the O1 with this, they're getting the same knockdown that they've come to expect from their spinosad. The labels on some of these products are, they say 7 to 10 days. Most of the farmers I talk to tell me a heavy dew, and most of that washes off the leaf. So they went from a few days of control out to 10 to 14 days seems to be the longest I know anybody who's gone out. It's about 21 days. They're getting between this. There's a new product here, will be Atticus. They now have a spinosad product on the market as well. So something else to look at.
Is it less expensive?
What's that?
Is it less expensive?
That's what I've been told. I haven't had a
Good.
direct conversation with them yet, but I have been told that it is less money than the ones that are on the market now. But yeah, I think that's something that you brought up too, the heat and the drought. And I think yeah, it's been interesting. Some of the stories that have come in off the East Coast this summer, that their weather patterns have maybe mimicked a little more of what we just call normal here in the West, with the heat and the lack of rain. But again, like you said, some of the stories here, and it's interesting. One farm in particular in Virginia, been playing around with some of this stuff for 2, 3 years now, and he thinks maybe he can see a difference, maybe here, there. And this summer, I guess it literally is just night and day. You can see to the line. Once the stressors, the environmental stressors, the abiotic stress showed up, why, yeah, they says it literally is visible to the line. So again, some of the yards, it's odd to me that you can have a lawn without needing to water it all the time. But yeah, people who have been putting this on their lines or lawns literally is night and day difference. An interesting phone call we were talking about earlier got out of Virginia again from the Nutridense folks. It's so hot and dry, they've been struggling to start their compost windrows. That they're Midwest biosystems practitioners, Lubke compost practitioners. They're struggling to get their carbons wet and warming up in order to, be able to combine the nitrogen in that process. They started going out in the middle of the night trying to wet things up. Daryl finally got the idea, threw some O2 in with his water wagon. They did that application, he said, at 8 o'clock at night. They came back at 5 o'clock in the morning to try to wet it again, because this is what best thing they had found for days, weeks with this. They came back at 5 o'clock in the morning and started putting the turner through this, and the steam came boiling out of the windrow. Yep. He said it was phenomenal. Prior to this, it was so hot, the water would evaporate off the top of the windrow, or it would run straight through those windrows, and they would just have a mushy mess in the bottom. And he said when they got digging behind the turner, why everything's perfectly moist, everything has been saturated, pulled inside that carbon material. And the bonus that they were really looking at with this too is the end converter product that they use. That the end converter product has been pulled inside that plant material. They're not just trying to capture the volatiles that might be coming off of that windrow now. They're actually going to capture and hold those volatiles that are inside of that carbon material.
And as
it's
most
interesting to see what their test results come back on this and going forward now.
Tom, and as most of the guys that we work with know, we work with a number of guys around the entire country that do this humus compost, and it's a truly unique science. They make liquid compost out of it, and we're mixed with a lot of these things. And I believe, do we still have Gerald on the phone?
Gerald and Cameron still with us.
Gerald, do you want to talk about some success?
I'm on the. See, I'm on my computer now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. You want to talk about any successes you've seen? I know you had some success with the blueberry guy going much early this year with the humus and the O2 coming out of frost.
Well, I'm still waiting on the results on that one.
Okay.
I mean, the blueberry fellow in Pennsylvania is phenomenal, taking his blueberries from 1,200 pounds to 10,000.
Wait, what did you just say?
Acre.
Say that one more time, Gerald.
A blueberry grower, a friend of mine in Pennsylvania, took his blueberries from 1,200 pounds to the acre to over 10,000 in 5 years using the extract, humus extract, and the O1YS.
Awesome.
Oh.
Wow.
So if you consider $3 a pound for wholesale blueberries, he went from $3,600 an acre to 30,000.
So in other words, he's going to be giving you a Christmas present this year. A good one.
Free blueberry pies for everybody.
Oh.
And hey, also, I believe on the phone we've got Ralph Nudie with us today. Ralph, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
You want to tell us about anything you've been seeing out in your part of the world? I mean, I had the pleasure of spending some time with you out there, but tell us what's going on out there.
Yes, please, because half the lies I tell other pea farmers comes from Ralph Nudie. So bless us, Ralph.
So I think the first time we used O2IS was about 14 years ago. And for those of you back in other parts of the country, I was reminded once that Nevada is the driest state in the union. And during the drought cycle, in a year, we probably averaged around 2.5 inches of moisture. So that was a full calendar year. We had, the reason I started using it was because I understood from Robin that the chitosan would control the stomata and help regulate the evapotranspiration rate. So the first time we did it, we applied it through a wheel line sprinkler and the wind was blowing. And we did it on one wheel line. So we didn't really notice much, but the next time we applied, my brother, who does all of our hay raking, because people that are familiar with wheel line sprinklers, every 40 foot is a flapper valve. And when you shut off the riser to drain the line to move it, it drains through the flapper valve. So we've got an 8 or 10 foot circle of green and growing hay. When you're baling, it's ready to go to start growing again. Well, my brother, I'd say, you notice anything? And he'd say, no, it's just all snake oil. Well, what ended up happening, the second application, I asked him, are you noticing anything? And he says, yeah, when I rake now, we no longer have green circles. The whole field is green because it's all ready to grow. So basically what I believe was happening, the stomatas were regulating that, and what was happening, not all of the moisture was being taken up out of the ground. So
I think along those lines too, there's probably some soil conditioning might be coming from some of the other ingredients in there. There's some farmers I've started working with the last few years that one of the uses they have found for the products is to clean the nozzles on their pivots. Out here in deep water, a lot of times we're pumping a lot of carbonates, sodium, things like that. And yeah, apparently I think there's some soil conditioning properties to some extent that come from an application also.
Mark,
well,
you mentioned turf earlier. What are you seeing in the turf industry and on some of the golf courses and the turf farms? I mean, that's been one of the biggest stories that I've heard you guys talking about this summer.
Well, we're constantly growing in that industry. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to add 3 or 4 new golf courses a week, and it's word of mouth. And I mean, it's growing completely organically, and I love it because just superintendents are hearing from other superintendents, and they give us a call. And we've got enough oars in the water with distribution in the golf world now that we're able to constantly reward the guys selling the products with new customers just coming across to us, and that's really nice. And then we've got there's another gentleman that we've been working with for actually almost as long as Ralph, and his name is Ryan McEwen. And Ryan is I consider him my little poster boy for O2YS. When I first met him, he was a superintendent at Jupiter Island Club. And I don't know if you guys can understand the entire gravity of that, but Jupiter Island Club is, I know Tom can't. No, never will be able to, because good grazing ain't going to happen there.
All right.
But I pulled into this course, and even back then he goes, yeah, Tiger owns that house. Wayne Huizinga, the owner of Waste Management, owns that house, and this titan of somebody owns this house, and this president of General Motors owns this house. I'm like, this is nuts. But he left that, went into big turf production, went into running King Ranch turf farms in Florida, went from there to several places, but he is now with a group. You know, I consider him, he can't hold a job, but I'm kidding. He is now with a group called Loving. And Loving is a company out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I don't know what lucky stars they've soared under, but they are basically buying up turf farms all through the Southeast and Florida like they're going out of style. which means every new turf farm that they pick up that's not already using us, we're bringing on new turf farms like they're going out of style. So big thanks out there to Ryan. Go ahead, Kelly.
And before we leave today, we have a new product that is coming out. So
saving that for last.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just tell us just a couple of minutes what to expect, when it'll be hitting the market, and a little bit about how we're going to use it.
Hopefully, it'll be hitting the market within the next week. Hopefully, possibly the end of this. Well, it's already the end of this week, but by next week, hopefully. But what we've done, just because out of, I call it necessity, or I don't want to use the word greed, but call it necessity. You know, since we started this company back many moons ago, there weren't many people out there peddling chitosan in the marketplace. And as far as I'm concerned, there's still not, but there's people that are peddling chitosan, and they're peddling big numbers. And one of the ones that we see is our most competitive list is a product that has 5.5% chitosan. And everybody knows that ours says 2% on the label. I'll still take our 2% with our yucca or our cayea and all of our other secret ingredients. I'll still take it over big numbers. But that being said, we have a full product being brought to the market called Impact 6. We like the name Impact 6 because it is a 6% chitosan product. Just so we could have a little one-up on somebody. Yeah, there's others out there with crazier, bigger numbers, but we've played a little bit of fun to it, because to get those big numbers, you have to use a different type of chitosan. And I'm not going to go into all the different types, but we're still using our 2% that's in our O2. And then we're using that other type of chitosan to get to the 6. So I'm hoping that just immediate side-by-side trials by anybody out there. And I'm going to go back after. There you go, Andre. Can you see that? Say something so you'll come up live, Andre. Speak. There you go.
There's the label. I guess fresh off the press. We have a 1,300-gallon batch ready to ship out to various states. I could read out a list of what states we've got covered right now, if y'all want.
So you did finish. Atta boy.
No, oh no, we finished. We have the manufacturing done. So QC on it. Oh, let's see.
Speak into the microphone.
We're losing you, Andre.
Huh?
Speak into the microphone. We're losing you.
Oh, okay. The microphone, I think, is right in front of me.
Okay.
Okay. We have currently Illinois, Pennsylvania, Texas, Florida, Georgia, New York, New Jersey, Utah, Massachusetts, and that's the ones we have currently registered right now. North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Kentucky are currently pending, and we're looking at other states to put on that list.
Excellent. We have one private labeler in the country right now that will be offering that product to his entire database on website, GCI Turf Academy. If anybody's looking for small amounts, 8 ounces, 12 ounces, 16 ounces, 1 gallons, whatever, he'll have those of the new product. So but that's it. And I mean, Tom and I, we are going to push. You know, I always refer to O2 as the gal that brought us to the dance, and she still never let me down. And I am not going to push the other product over O2, but it is available. And if it turns into a, for lack of a better term, peeing contest with somebody, yeah, I'll throw out some numbers and say, yeah, we have this. So there you go.
Is there anybody on the phone today that has any questions that you want to jump in right now? Anybody else have any stories that they've seen using Organisan products?
I got some questions.
Okay.
The sawflies in Montana, you mentioned the BB and the nematicide?
Yes.
The nematicide? What applications are you doing? One application in nematicide?
Yeah, they're just doing this as a seed treatment. basically in the fall. A lot of guys, that's the only time they're putting it on 2 ounces per hundredweight of the Nemasan, and then the Bassiana on with that. And that apparently is really efficacious for them in the fall, keeping the grasshoppers away and helping to at least greatly suppress the sawfly population.
Yeah, the Bavaria really takes care of the repellent for the grasshoppers. I'm going to have Ben contact you, Tom.
Okay. Sure.
Because Ben has done a lot of work with thousands of acres of sawflies in Colorado.
Sure.
And you and him can kind of talk about it. Have you talked to Ben about the Organisan that you're using in Montana?
Off and on, like we've had numerous conversations here and there about where we're putting this and why this, that, the other. I guess I haven't been this has been going on for a couple of years now. I've kind of been watching, waiting, seeing, making sure that this works before we really stepped out on the diving board and did a cannonball in the pool. But I think at this point we're ready to cannonball.
Oh my gosh, the next
cannonball
is going to be Tom Cannonball in a pool.
Yeah, buddy, there you go. Cannonball and touchdown.
With his, oh Lord, with his boots on. I can hear it.
Blueberries. You guys have been talking about blueberries.
Yep.
What about SWD? You have control of SWD with blueberries.
Spotted wing Drosophila. I don't know. Blueberries aren't really that's out of my wheelhouse. Like I haven't ever had to contend with.
Is that Reggie? Is that the bug that basically pierces the blueberry, lays its egg inside?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard guys down in Florida come back with our Florida distributors and tell me that they've seen positive things with that, but I haven't heard anybody bragging on it, as of like in the last few weeks.
Okay, because we use the jab Bavaria to try to control the SWD. We thought we had it all taken care of.
Right.
And it was not working as good as we expected. So I'm going to talk to Ben and Jim. You guys probably will have to do some trials.
Yeah, because I mean,
the combinations.
Right, because as you know, Reggie, where we go out together, it's a match made in heaven. It's a hand in glove thing. I mean, we make the Bavaria last longer, and we just make it reproduce faster on the plant also. So I mean, it's pretty unique the way that it all works together.
I think the other thing we need to throw into the mix here, and this is sort of dovetailing on what Tom was talking about earlier about these grasshoppers, etc. One of the plant responses with exposure to chitosan in this sort of SAR defense response type suite of responses is plants can produce what's called volatile organic carbons, VOCs. And there's a whole variety of these things. It's part of this overall suite of these secondary plant metabolites. And these things are produced in minute quantities. They're aerosolized. They can act in all sorts of roles as signaling molecules to other plants within an area. They can act as antifeedants, as just retardants, all kinds of different responses. So plants will have receptors to these things and these insects. And I'm more or less convinced that some of these stories I'm hearing about whole fields being cleared of insects and the perimeter is more likely due to something like that, as opposed to chitosan taking an insect that does this 1 second and it's that the next. We don't do that, as far as I'm aware. But these sort of secondary responses that are generated by plants in response to the chitosan application, I think is probably what we're seeing.
Well, doctor, I can tell you when you're driving down Highway 12, which is a gravel road that goes off of 280, whatever it is, down in Eureka, Nevada, that entire road is covered with bugs. And as soon as you turn onto his driveway, literally, there's no.
That's what I'm saying. I think you're backing up what I'm saying.
Okay.
In other words, when you get in that area where the application is happening, you're seeing an entire cleared area.
Yeah.
You're not seeing dead insects necessarily. You're just seeing none in
No,
that
no,
area.
no, no, they're not there. They're just not there. It's
Right.
unique.
Who's gone?
So
That's
No,
very cool. What one of the last things I want to say, and I'll let you wrap it up, but one of the last things I want to say is, you know, we talk about it every year, but it is a proven fact that we've seen in every kind of crop, especially the crops that are perennial, whether it's turf or alfalfa or whatever. A fall application brings things out in the spring so much quicker and so much more advantageous. And getting us on cover crops does the same thing, because biology doesn't die in the wintertime like we all think it does. I mean, it does not freeze out. I mean, maybe up in North Dakota, it might be, you know, a few miles deep before it's not frozen, but it's not dead.
no,
Another question.
sure.
Tom, Harry Strohauer, Ariel applies product every week, and he uses chitosan every week. Is that common or not
Oh, yeah, depends
on
on.
his potatoes?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we have potato guys around that. But yes, every time the pivot goes around, there is 4 ounces per acre going on. Anytime the airplane goes in the air, there's 4 to 8 ounces, 16 ounces sometimes going on. And it's interesting that the guys who have the best success rates are always the most managerially minded. It's their own agronomists on the payroll sometimes. And they start to understand that we get focused a lot of times on a single aspect of chitosan or ki or yucca. We have to step back sometimes and realize that there's just a whole ensemble of stuff from A to Z that this does. Sometimes all they want is just the spreading, sticking capabilities this brings to the table. There is some wetting agents and some spreading agents that we have taken completely out of farmers' portfolios, just because of what we do for the adjuvant quality as an adjuvant for their sprays. And anytime you're doing that, you're also going to be picking up any of the other attributes, the stomatal conductance, the selective fungal influence that we have, killing the deleterious effects on the pathogenic fungi, promoting the beneficial fungi, microbial food source, some of the plant eliciting. Again, the sap analysis thing, and your blueberry guys, I would really recommend, if they're not doing this already, to start pulling sap analysis and see what's going on, where there's a nutritional something that's not moving, not going as we get. But yeah, there's it's and for me
Tom,
here it's standard.
Tom, and someone else that, not to interrupt you, but someone else that I've seen more often than you have. We've got a several thousand acre farm just south of Chicago called DeGroot Vegetables. They spray O2YS basically every 2 weeks on everything that they have in the field. And that's from potatoes to bell peppers to you name it. I mean, all types of squash and everything else. And they literally, one of the things that him and all of his neighbors brag about is where they use us in their herbicides. And they're not organic. Where they use us in their herbicides, they've been able to get control on water hemp, been able to get control on a number of weeds that the neighbors are not able to get control on. So on that aspect, they're using us across the board, and they're also seeing we're getting cut in transpiration rates up there also.
So, and along those lines, again, this gets into the side effect thing that we don't ever really pay attention to in agriculture, that they're after this, just like you said, Mark, for increased efficacy of their herbicides. At the same time, they're helping squash a parasitic nematode population in the soil. They're going to be reducing their soybean cyst nematodes.
Yep.
There's all these other things. You can't, just because there's one aspect of chitosan that we might be applying it for, you can't stop everything else that it does. So it gets to be kind of overwhelming at sometimes trying to keep track of everything.
Yeah, in other words, the plants don't care what the label says.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's what the whole key of it is that, when you're applying chitosan to the plant, the response is going to be basically determined by developmental level, the genetics, the stress level, irrigation. I mean, there's just a whole range of different, in situ at that time conditions that are going to modulate and regulate what the response is going to be with chitosan.
Yep. And this thing with the fall too, especially like as the cover crop thing keeps growing here and guys are understanding, learning the benefits of this, we don't really focus on the cover crop at all. You just put it in and it grows and that's miraculous. And then next spring, we're just horrified when the slugs show up. So I have had conversations with farmers. I don't know what went on last winter, this spring, but there was the slug phone calls this spring. There was slugs from ocean to ocean in this country this year. I don't know what is up with the insects this year, but it was ridiculous. Well, come to find out here, a lot of times if you'll pay a pulse sap analysis on your cover crop, see what nutrients you have going on with that, make sure your iron levels are adequate to luxurious in your cover crop. Because this was a fun one. This is one thing I really enjoy about this job is I can't help but learn stuff. So if you look at a molder's wheel, copper and iron are antagonistic to each other. Anytime you cut something open, an insect, a bug, and it bleeds either green or blue, that is because they have oxidized copper at the center of their blood, if you will, molecule there. So if the iron levels are adequate, it affects the copper just like we have iron in our hemoglobin. Plants have magnesium in their chlorophyll. And when you look at all three of those, it is the exact same chemical makeup structure. The only difference is what's at the center of it. So with these blue and green bloods, it's copper. And as long as if the iron levels are sufficient, they can't be in that environment. The iron is going to affect the copper in their, again, air quotes, blood, and they just can't be there for that. So, and this is, again, something, iron's a wild animal we've learned with the sap analysis, that it's, your plant can't distinguish when she takes it up if it's oxidized or reduced. And if iron is taken up in the oxidized form, it's not bioavailable. It will just get parked in the old leaves. And I've had guys tell me about this on they're doing corn stuff, that they have high levels of iron in the old leaves and they have very deficient levels of iron in the new leaves. And nobody could figure out why for a while. And this is what everybody's kind of deduced with this is the oxidized iron doesn't move in the plant. It is not plant available. And one farm in particular was kind of shocked when they made an O2YS application with a foliar nutrient, something or another they were doing there. No, it was a herbicide, V4. And when they had taken a sap analysis the week before, saw this with the iron. They had done their herbicide application, pulled a sap analysis the next week or 2 weeks later, and the iron levels had evened out. And this is a question I still have for myself. I don't know what it's like I said earlier. I don't know if we're translocating oxidized iron. I don't know if we're knocking an oxygen off of that somewhere, if we're reducing that iron a step, but things we still have yet to learn and understand as the technology continues to grow and understand with this, but we seem to have a big impact. We're learning major impact on nutrient translocation throughout the plant.
Awesome. Kelly, you got anything else for us?
No, I don't, but I am going to stop the recording on this today.